Hi, Facebook world. If you are hearing my voice, it's because we are getting ready to run our second Facebook Live event. And we are going to get started right at 5 o'clock. So we've got 3 minutes. If you're sitting down to watch this, why don't you go grab yourself a drink and we'll be starting up in a couple minutes here. Thanks for joining us. Hi, everyone. If you just were scrolling through and saw that we are starting an event, it's because we are getting ready to run our second Facebook Live event for the bridge replacement project, and we're going to get started in about 2 minutes. So thanks for joining us. We have 1 minute to go. And the countdown has started. We will be getting going on this Facebook Live right at 5 o'clock. So get comfy. Okay, it's 5 o'clock. Let's get going. Welcome everyone. You have officially arrived, and you're joining us live at the second Facebook Live event for the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Replacement Project. I promise not to chew on my words too much throughout this event. So I'll take a sip of water and we're going to get started. I am Jessica Pickle. I'm going to be your facilitator, and I'm also a part of the bridge replacement team. We are so excited that you're joining us. We had a ton of fun, received a lot of really good questions at the last event, and we decided that we we're going to make this into a series. This is just one of our ways to make ourselves available to all of you, so that way you can bring your big questions, your ideas, and any questions or concerns that you have for us. So that's what this is about. I wanted to just let you know that we do have a few of our bridge commissioners with us tonight, as well as a couple of staff that are supporting the replacement project. And the focus for tonight's presentation is going to really highlight what we've been doing with our Bridge Aesthetics Committee process. Eric Wilson is our chair for that committee, and he's going to be sharing a little bit about what that committee has been up to and how you can weigh in at our upcoming open house on April 17th. We're also going to get a quick update from Mike Shannon on just what else is happening with the project. But the bulk of tonight's Facebook Live event will focus on what you want to talk about. So even though we have experts here who can speak to the Bridge Aesthetics Committee, we want to hear what's on your minds. Before I kick it over to our commissioners, just a couple more things for you to know. At any point throughout this event, you can ask us your questions, provide your comments in the chat feature on your Facebook app. We will address your questions in the order that we receive them. And if we start to see some themes emerging, we might just group them and respond to all of them at once. The other beautiful thing about this being on Facebook is that Facebook automatically records this for us. So at any point in time, you can come back and rewatch this if you have to step away. And we will also add a link to this to the website for later viewing as well. And I think that that's pretty much it. The last thing is that we are planning to end tonight's Facebook event at 6 o'clock. If for some reason we're unable to get to something that you want to talk about, don't fret. As I mentioned before, this is going to be a series that we're going to be doing. So we will have future Facebook Live events, but you can also join us on April 17th at the open house. And with that, I'd love to pass it over to Commissioner Babbitts, who can introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Jessica. My name is Arthur Babbitts. I am a member of the Hood River County Board of Commissioners. And for the last 6 months or so, I've also been a member of the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority, which is the new commission that we formed to oversee this bridge replacement process. I've been involved with attempting to get this bridge replaced since 2007, believe it or not. I'm not even sure I should be proud of the fact I've been working on this for so long, but I will be able to provide some sense of the history of this. And in fact, can provide some sense of the history of the bridge going back to 1924 when it was built. So I just really look forward to your questions, and I'm going to turn it over now to Eric Wilson to introduce himself.
Thank you, Arthur. My name is Eric Wilson. I am the chair of the Aesthetics Committee and also a member of the Engineering and Construction Committee. My background is as an architect. I've practiced on institutional projects throughout the Northwest, and I got involved because I believe that the bridge can be serviceable and beautiful and all at the same time. So I'm excited to be a part of this group and part of the Bridge Authority. Marla, sorry.
Thank you.
Hi, guys. I am Marla Kiefler. I'm also a commissioner with the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority and the mayor of White Salmon. And it's so great to be doing this with two of my other fellow commissioners tonight. And certainly I've been involved in this project like all of our communities have for many years, and looking forward to this conversation tonight. I feel like the best part about these is hearing what's on your guys' mind. So excited to see what you have to say.
All right, my name is Mike Shannon. I'm with HNTV Corporation. We are the consultant who is working as the owner's rep for the Bridge Authority and helping to oversee the delivery of the project and ensure that we meet the goals and objectives of the project. And I think I was going to shift into giving you a quick project update and where we are. So we are at an exciting time on the project. We're about 63% funded, so we're making good progress there. But we're also at a really critical point where we're really transitioning from the planning phase into the final design and construction phase. So at the end of this week, we will give a notice to proceed to our contractor Kiewit. They will come on to do the design and construction. And we're excited to have them on board and get started to head towards our goal of having construction started in 2025 and having this new bridge open to everyone in October of 2029. So excited to be a part of this meeting. Thank you.
And with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Commissioner Wilson. Do you want to give us an update on who is the Bridge Aesthetics Committee and what have we been working on?
Sure. Thank you, Jessica. So I guess just to start, the Bridge Aesthetics Committee is not a bridge design committee, and Arthur and Michael kind of referred to some of the long history that's gone on, as well as kind of the idea that we've hired a team to actually do the mechanics of designing the bridge. What the Aesthetics Committee is really working to do is try to create some parameters that come out of our community and inform that design when the design team gets going. Arthur talked about how long he's worked on the bridge, and a lot of that is because these are complex projects. They take more than just deciding you're going to build a bridge. They take alignment of political forces, funding forces, and a lot of other things. So we're not starting from ground zero. We're not starting from a blank slate. We're starting from a lot of research that's been done earlier on the bridge and trying to leverage that into actually getting a new bridge in this iteration of the attempt. So what we in the aesthetics committee are trying to do is create a playbook that contractor can work with. We've had an organizational meeting, and we also had our first workshop last week, and starting to form some of those ideas, some themes that we can work with. And those we have coming up a public open house where we'll be able to share a little bit more of that. The members on the committee, sorry, are not only members directly from our communities on both sides of the bridge, but also members that participate in how the historic highway is maintained and managed, and how infrastructure goes through the gorge. So we have a lot of expertise on that, not only on the community side, but also on the practicalities of what it takes to do infrastructure here in the gorge. Did I cover all the topics there, Jessica?
Do you wanna just briefly touch on what the public might see at the upcoming open house? Like, kind of based on that feedback we're hearing from that committee, what can the public expect?
So, like I mentioned, the committee, we've gotten started and we've started collecting and coalescing some ideas. The idea of the first open house is really to share those ideas that the committee is developing and starting to work through, and get some feedback from the community. Does an idea resonate? Does it not? Are there things that aren't being thought about? And the idea is to collect all those in that open house and then further work on those in that committee. I think one thing that is worth mentioning again is it's not a blank slate. We have some parameters that we need to work within, and the committee is based on focusing on not only that, but what are the big ideas that we can bring. Unfortunately, not every idea is going to be a winner on this project. We've got history, we've got funding, we've got a lot of things that we need to work, and there's a balancing act that'll have to be done. But if we don't collect those ideas now, we can't act on them as we go forward.
Thanks, Eric. Commissioner Wilson. We don't have any questions coming through yet, so don't be shy if you have things that you're curious about, or anything that you would like for our commissioners to address. Please let us know. Put them in the chat box on Facebook. Maybe while we wait for some questions to come through, Eric, are there things that you can think of that the public might be interested in seeing, in terms of like big ideas that have come through from the public so far for aesthetics?
You know, I think one of the topics that we always get a lot of energy around is the bikeway or the walkway or the multimodal pathway. Everybody is really interested in talking about that. We haven't really made any solid decisions on that, but I think some of the ideas that are coming out of that are interesting. We've started talking about it in terms of a new public space for the communities on both sides of the bridge, which I think is a really interesting idea, to not think of it as just a passage, but a place for the public to gather. There's like one of the other concepts that seems to be resonating strongly is the idea that community members don't want this to be a gateway from one side of the river to the other, or from one state to another. The discussion has revolved around a continuous connection that connects one broader community. I think they're a little bit abstract ideas, but they're a really strong foundation to base some of the design concepts on.
And then, Commissioner Babbitts, do you want to speak to just what the approach has felt like since you actually sit on the committee?
Yeah, I've actually been able to sit through the meeting. It was really very interesting to me. I have to say I'm a little distracted at the moment because there's the most incredibly intense rainbow outside going right over the bridge. I've got a double rainbow. So I would turn my camera around so you guys could see it. But what we've in the first meeting, what I found most interesting, I'm an engineer, so I kind of look at things from an engineering point of view, but the approach has been very experiential. It's been to look at, to consider for someone driving across the bridge or someone walking across the bridge or someone rolling across the bridge, what is the experience going to be like? What is it going to feel like? What are they going to see? What are they going to hear? And I really find that to be a very interesting approach. And what you realize is that the current bridge, for 100 years, has provided us with an experience, and I got to say, it's somewhat terrifying experience at times. But it provides us with, at the same time, it's spectacular views, and it's a chance to look up and down the river, and a chance to get real close to some of your neighbors. But in the process, it has sort of defined the transit between our three cities, our two counties. And we're making a big step in changing that. And I'm glad that we're doing it in a very deliberate manner. I am thrilled that we have this situation where we have so many people in Hood River and so many people in Bingen and White Salmon who live on one side and work on the other side. And they work just 3 miles away from their house, but are forced to drive today because we don't have the option of walking. We don't have the option of cycling. And I expect that the walking and rolling lane on the bridges or lanes on the bridge are going to be very heavily used. They're going to be a place where people interact, people meet each other. I'm waiting to see our first wedding out there. We'll see when that happens, but I think there's going to be a lot of activity out there, and I am so glad that we have some really creative people weighing in on what they want that experience to be like. People who are a lot more creative than me, which isn't that hard. So.
Thanks for adding that. I completely agree. I facilitate that committee, and it's been really cool just to hear the different and innovative, and I mean there's just a lot of energy around the possibility for this bridge, which has been great. We do have a couple of questions that have come through. So the first question is, after the bridge is complete, will there be a movement to turn the bridge over to a state agency? And I'm guessing that this is probably a good one for you, Commissioner Babbitts.
Yes. I can say that simply. I have made no secret of the fact that I hope that when we have a new bridge installed, that is, doesn't have a maintenance backlog, is not a huge liability, that we can convince. I believe the way it works is that the different bridges across the Columbia, they alternate between the states. So I believe that this would be an Oregon bridge. And I absolutely expect that the Bridge Authority will be attempting to make that case to ODOT, but that's nothing that we can plan for now. We have to get the bridge built. We have to get to that place where we are in a position to make that case. And I should say that that's me speaking. I can't speak for the commission because we have not yet discussed this.
Thank you. The next question is, if October 2029 is the goal to have the new bridge up and running, how long will the bridge be down while the new one is being built? This actually seems like a good one maybe for you, Mike.
Yeah, actually, the great thing about how we're doing the project is we're actually building the new bridge just downstream of the existing bridge. So we can do, I always say about 95% of the project can be built without any interruption at all to the existing traffic. So it may be a little distraction to watch as we do the construction next to you, but it should have little to no impact on the existing traffic.
Awesome. I'm sure that makes everyone happy to hear. What will the impact be to the marina once construction is started? This might actually also be a good one for you, Mike.
Yeah, no, and we've actually talked about this. We've talked about it to the contractor. As you know, contractors are used to working in all kinds of environments, from downtown cities to more rural locations. They're used to keeping businesses open. They're used to working with interaction of public. So I don't think there will be a lot of impact to the use of the marina. There will have to be some coordination. Of course, safety will be our biggest concern to make sure everything is happening in a safe manner. But we don't really anticipate a ton of impact to the use of the marina facilities.
Great. I've got one for you, Commissioner Keeler. I've appreciated the updates and announcements about funding awards for the bridge. Is there an idea of how close we are to funding received versus projected at this point in time? Can the board also speak to how many additional sources of funding we are still waiting to hear from?
That's a great question. And before I jump in, I'm just going to quickly add as a PSA to everyone, we want you to stay here, but I just actually got a video of the amazing rainbow across the bridge right now. It does sound like it's beautiful. My husband's driving across it. Anyway, yeah, regarding funding, it's been very exciting the way that we've started this year with such momentum, getting that 200 million that we had always set as a goal from the federal grant programs. We have 2/3 basically. We've got about 327 million of the total 520 million that we're looking to raise. It doesn't mean though that we can kind of take our foot off the gas when it comes to the funding aspect of this project. And I would say that probably the most critical thing that's really top of mind for us is making sure that we see the commitment that we need from Oregon and Washington legislature. So Washington's obviously, what got a lot of this momentum going 2 years ago, and we've been really fortunate to have Senator King as a strong advocate on the project, but we are still aiming for an overall goal of about 125 million from Washington and 125 million from Oregon. And we've got about 75 million secured on the Washington side, and we're making some headway with Oregon, but we've got a lot of ground to cover. We're at about 20 million there. And anyone jump in if all this off the top of my head recounting of numbers, I'm messing something up. But certainly, it sounds like whoever sent this message is already getting our updates. But if you aren't getting our newsletters or following us on Facebook, please share your email if you'd like, or just follow us on Facebook, because we'll certainly be leaning on all of you to help us speak to our legislators in both Olympia and Salem this upcoming year so that they really hear and feel the urgency. The 200 million does not pay for the whole bridge, and we really need all pieces of the pie.
Thank you. I've got a couple for you, Commissioner Wilson. So the first one, please describe the fundamental parameters that the Aesthetics Committee is using to begin their discussion.
Okay, well, where we're
Good
starting.
question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fundamental parameters. So we started with several ideas on the experiential piece, like Commissioner Babbitt had mentioned, and that has evolved into kind of some of these other ideas about public spaces and connectivity rather than gateway type of idea. So we've been working on those to try to develop that a little bit and digging into the conversation. We've got about 25, 28 members on this committee. And a lot of times an idea comes out and it takes a little digging and a little picking to really figure out what the basic idea is. And I think that's how we got out in front of the kind of no separation. It's a connection of community. And I think that's a really important distinction. And it starts to say a lot about how you treat the bridge and how it starts to lay down on the landscape. I think the other thing that we've had some conversation around is that the bridge is a pretty good sized structure. It's almost a mile long. It's going to be just over 50 feet wide, but it's not something, a lot of the structure that puts that bridge there is going to be defined a lot by the engineers. What we're really trying to do is step back and say, where can we look at elements of the bridge and really affect what it's like for those that use it daily?
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd also love to get Mike Shannon to add on to just some of the other guiding documents that need to be factored into this conversation as well, including NEPA and there's also just like some technical things that fall into this conversation.
Yeah, there is a lot of things that govern a project like this. Designing bridges have developed over many, many years, and the criteria and what we use is developed as well. And being a project that actually is connected between two states, we have to meet and look at both state criteria and the DOTs for each state. So being a Oregon-based business, what we've decided is that we will start our design criteria based on Oregon criteria, but then also take into account national criteria and see if there's efficiencies that we can use to leverage that. But as Commissioner Babbitt said earlier, we want to make sure that this bridge meets the standards of both Washington and Oregon in order to be able to hand it over to them. So we'll use AASHTO, we'll use Oregon DOT criteria, we'll use WashDOT criteria, as well as looking at some local criteria at the places where we connect. So a lot of different things to look at and a lot of controlling criteria that we'll evaluate.
Thank you. Okay, I've got another one for you, Commissioner. Oh, yes, Curtis, please jump in. So for those of you who, because we didn't introduce Curtis, Curtis is a part of the bridge design team as well.
I have a little bit of an add-on here to what Commissioner Wilson was saying. I think as a generally accepted premise, a foundation or sort of philosophical approach to the way we're looking at this is that when you have an exceptionally scenic setting, as we do, that the bridge should not compete with that. And that we're treating the bridge as a platform from which to view that setting. But of course, there are also key points in the three towns that you're also viewing the bridge. So all that important. And I think the word that has been most used is in harmony with the natural setting.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you for adding that. All right, I've got a question from a second grader from Catherine Thomas. They're wondering what color the bridge will be painted. So Commissioner Wilson, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, well, it depends on who you ask. The bridge will probably not be one color. My guess is we'll have more than one color on it. But one of the things we have talked about in the committee is really that the bridge being treated with honesty of materials. So kind of the idea that if a type of construction material is used, that maybe that construction material ought to display what it normally looks like rather than having a final finish on it. That said, there will be plenty of things that need to be painted. And if you have ideas, maybe we should get those in the chat so we can collect them.
Yes, and I'll just add that this is a bridge that's going to be used for 100 years, and we know that our second graders will be using it in some way at some point in time. And so we are also going to find ways to get your feedback at these upcoming open houses. So we hope that you can join us with your parents. Okay, the next question that I have is, does the Gorge Scenic Area status impact the bridge's aesthetics? I'm gonna send this one over to you, Commissioner Wilson, and then Mike Shannon can help you out if needed. Oh, you're muted. Great.
I'm sorry, it was my turn to get distracted. Can you restate the question, please?
Sure. Does the Gorge Scenic Area status impact the bridge's aesthetics?
Yes, it will. We will need to get a final blessing through the Gorge Commission, as with any other project. I think at this point, most of them are aware it's going on. So hopefully they're kind of listening as we go through the process. It's going to be a little while before we're ready to do that, but hopefully the aesthetics committee will help that discussion go forward, being based on what the community is looking for.
Thank you. Anything else you'd like to add, Mike? I feel like it covered it, but I'll,
Yeah, I mean, just, we're aware of the National Scenic Management Plan that's a part of that the Columbia River Gorge Commission has developed, and the Aesthetics Committee is aware of that as well. So we'll need to make sure we, follow what that plan also lays out.
okay, while you're unmuted, Mike, maybe you actually, now that you're muted again, I've got another one for you. Has the design been decided between what I believe are 3 options? And I wonder if this is like going back in time for when there were different alternatives. And maybe actually Commissioner Babbitts, if you've got thoughts on this too, because I believe that you were involved with that process.
Yeah, I think they're probably talking about the 3 possible locations. So yes, a preferred route has been selected, and geotechnical work has been done along that route. You've seen barges out in the river drilling cores, so we know what the river looks like, what the river bottom looks like, where the bridge is going to be put, and we're quite clear on physically where the bridge is. And Mike can tell us how many feet is it away? How many feet to the west of the current bridge is it?
It's probably roughly 200 feet to the west of the current bridge. And if you're talking about the 3 types of bridges that were studied at one time, yes, we did land on a preferred type of structure as well, from the 3 that were looked at a number of years ago. So, but has been a lot of evaluation done in getting to what we call preferred alternative.
We did receive a comment, to just kind of build off of what Commissioner Wilson, was sharing. So using natural look of materials used makes a lot of sense to minimize the cost and maintenance. So that's great, because it sounds like we're heading in the right direction. I've got another question. Will it be large enough so when pedestrians or bicyclists are passing will not experience difficulties? I noticed the one in the Dalles is not safe. When walking or riding a bicycle, it's scary because you're so close to the traffic or the road. And this is something that we have been speaking with the Aesthetics Committee about quite a bit. I don't know if Commissioner Wilson, you want to start the response for this based on what we've been talking about with that group, and then maybe Mike Shannon, you can also just talk about how we're thinking about this from an engineering perspective.
Well, I think Arthur was looking on this one. Did I see you? You were moving over there. I think Arthur wants to
Yeah,
say this one.
if you'd like,
All right.
I'd be happy to
All right.
jump in on this one, because this is something
Jump in.
near and dear to my heart. We are very much aware that this bridge, first, the bridge is going to be higher than the current bridge because it doesn't have a lift span. So people will be able to get up speeds on it. And we know that there'll be lots of e-bikes. And we know that we have a lot of tourists, people walking dogs, people with small children. And absolutely, we understand that the interaction between different kinds of non-vehicular users is going to be very important. We're going to be sure that the design team knows all of that. Going to force them to sit here and just watch. We can show them what it's like in Hood River when go and look at the Columbia River Highway Trail between Hood River and Mosier as an example. Absolutely, since the bridge in the Dalles was designed, there have been many discussions in the transportation community about how you properly design a facility like this. And I know that there have been lawsuits that have forced redesign of major, like the Brooklyn Bridge in New York. We're going to be informed by all of that. And it's so wonderful that we get to design a bridge, the bridge of tomorrow, instead of just a bridge with yesterday's standards on it. So maybe Mike can fill in some of the details on that.
Anything else?
I think Arthur, you hit it all. I mean, we need, that area has changed a lot, and we have a lot of interaction that's going to happen on this structure, and safety is, I think, one of the primary concerns in that. And we will be doing a lot of evaluating and looking at what the best option is for accommodating that it's a multi-use path, and it should be designed to be a multi-use path.
And if I could add, another important factor of it is how you get to it. the cities involved. So Marla, I'm sure, is going to want to jump in on this. You have to be able to get from White Salmon to the bridge, from Bingen to the bridge, from Hood River Connect to the bridge. If you notice in Hood River, all the bike paths and everything stop just short of the bridge. For good reason, since you can't ride your bike on it, but we're going to correct that. But there's going to be some really interesting problems that we have to work through in getting that all figured out.
Yeah, and I think as you just alluded to, to me, that's one of the exciting aspects of the ripple effect of this project. We were fortunate at the start of last year, maybe it was about springtime, we received the news that we had, I guess it was summer now. Boy, that year flew by. But anyway, we received a RAISE grant, which was also a federal program that is giving us $3.6 million to go towards planning out not just evaluating that bike ped experience on the bridge itself, but as Arthur mentioned, what those connections are like, and really about building out the network. And that is an opportunity for the cities and both counties to be engaged as part of that process, because the vision there is really that some of these other agencies, as these opportunities are identified, we can then pick up and plan those projects that complement that access on the bridge and make sure that it is safe and hopefully desired to actually walk or take the bike across the bridge instead of always a car. So it's great that I think all of the neighboring entities and then certainly the Bridge Authority are supportive of this, not just being about a lane on the bridge, but how it really activates the whole region.
Thank you, everyone. I actually want to kick it back to Curtis. You have some additional thoughts you'd like to add related to the color of the bridge.
Hopefully our second grader
I
hasn't
know.
left to do homework. That it's for a concrete bridge, which this bridge is likely to mostly be concrete. It's kind of a difficult question on color. There's the natural color of concrete, and then for bridges and walls, structures like that, we do often put kind of an industrial coating, a kind of paint, pigmented sealer, it's called. The problem with a bridge going over water is that someday it would have to be repainted, and that would be extremely difficult and an environmental concern and millions and millions of dollars to do. So most concrete bridges over water don't get painted. The steel parts of the bridge, railings and whatever other steel parts there may be, are recommended to be painted dark colors. Somebody asked about the gorge management plan, and that's in the management plan.
Super.
Thanks.
So I hope that answers your question. I have a couple of questions related to tolling now. So I think maybe Commissioner Keeler, you can help us get started on responding to this. The first one is there an estimate on what the initial bridge toll will be?
Well, I'm glad this question came up because originally tonight's topic was going to be tolling, because we know that the last time we had this conversation, there's a lot of questions. And this question specifically, what is that toll the day I cross the bridge? And, there's a lot of factors that go into that, but I don't want to sit here and sound like I'm giving a non-answer. So what I can say is that the reason why we keep emphasizing so much the importance of getting these state and federal commitments is ultimately the toll is going to be part of how we are paying off the final portion of funds that are needed to construct this project. And so the lower that amount is, the less that we need to finance. And when we did raise that toll the current toll back in September, it was about building the reserves based on a projected amount that we would need to secure as a loan. And so as we see these commitments, the 200 million, hopefully 125 from both Oregon and Washington, we're optimistic that it's going to put us on the lower end of that estimate. But the goal here, and really the key part of this and why we've pushed so hard to keep this a public project, is keeping this publicly funded and a project overseen by a public entity is really the thing that will guarantee that, and also these commissioners, the representation being from our community, that this toll is mindfully, when it needs to be raised in the future, that is a price that is set and can only be used to pay off what was financed for construction of the bridge, and then that repair and maintenance of the new bridge that we have. No other cost can be paid by that toll. And so we're really focused right now on what we need to do to set up the future commissioners. So when they're looking and forecasting the toll, once the bridge is opened, that whatever incremental increases might need to happen over the life of the bridge, they are as minimal as possible and are, again, starting from as low of a place to where we are currently. And I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in, because this is definitely the hot topic. And I know my household toll bill doubled since September. So know that you have commissioners that feel the pain of paying to cross this thing multiple times a day. And it is a driving focus and priority for us of this whole project.
Absolutely. Commissioner Babbitts, you unmuted yourself. You want to jump in?
I did. So one thing that's come up many times during our meetings, the three mayors have been very effective at helping us understand the hardship that the tolling can provide for members of our community. And so one of the things that we're just starting to figure out is the way that we can address that hardship and provide assistance for folks who can't afford the tolls, and do what's necessary so that there's minimal impact on the ability of people to afford to get to their workplace, or to their doctor's appointment for that matter. So I think it's a great question. One of the good factors here is that one of the positive elements of it is that because of the amount of federal and state funding that we've been able to round up, we're looking at an estimate of something like 20% of the total cost of the bridge is going to be paid by tolls. The rest of it, 80%, is being financed by grants and from other sources. So that's really good news, but it's still going to be expensive, because financing 20% to 520 million is a lot of financing. And hopefully we can shrink that down from 20% and keep the tolls even lower. But it's going to be a real hardship for some folks, and we're going to figure out how to address that.
So your response ties in very nicely to the part 2 of that, how what if we have an estimate for the initial toll, because the part 2 of their comment was the recent increase on the bridge toll was a huge barrier to folks in poverty from the Washington side that must cross to Oregon for medical or other resources. Do you have plans to support these community members by giving social service organizations access to free bridge vouchers that can be distributed to those who are impacted the most by the toll? And I think we kind of already addressed that a little bit, but I don't know if Commissioner Babbitts, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think that's whoever posed that understands that's one of the key ways that you would address this, is a question of providing adequate transit. And this area, our communities have done a really good job of increasing the amount of publicly available transit in the last couple of years. So being able to have transit options to get across the bridge, to get to your doctor, to be able to get a free trip across to your doctor is certainly an important thing. Yeah, I mean, you know how many folks on one side of the bridge have a doctor on the other side. It's really significant. But yeah, there are also folks who need to get across to go to work, and having social service agencies being able to provide them with vouchers, being able to assist them is precisely the sort of thing that we'll be talking about. I can't say what it will look like because we haven't agreed to it yet. We haven't really had that formal discussion, but that's exactly what we'll be talking about.
Yeah, and I would just add, I mean, these are the parts, again, back to this being a public representation, a public project. These are policy decisions that will be made by the commissioners that oversee this bridge. They will have that control, and you guys you can be a commissioner in the future or come and give comments. I mean, that is the part of this that is about making sure that the needs and the stressors of this infrastructure that's so critical for people are brought forward, so that commissioners in the future and now will be making good decisions. You know, a lot of that work, just initially, we're talking a lot about the design tonight, but there's infrastructure that has to be installed for the aspects of tolling. And some of these considerations will start coming into play, not necessarily the policy that will be decided future about maybe certain groups and how they are made sure to have equitable access, but making sure that the right equipment is there from the beginning, so that some of these different levers that can be pulled about reduced rates or how trips are tracked can be there from the beginning. So I think, I know I've said it before, and it's hard to make all these meetings, but written comments, connecting with commissioners that you maybe already know, or come find us. But these are the things that we definitely need to be hearing. We are trying to relay it, but we know that the stress of the toll is significant for many households.
And I just add one more element, which is that one thing that I think is pretty much baked in is that the bike ped access is going to be toll free.
Yes, thank you. We have already received a lot of questions about that, so thanks for addressing that. Okay, I've got a comment related to materials. Media blasted stainless steel could be a great option for railings or other metallic fixtures. It creates a softer look than brushed or polished stainless, but requires no painting or coatings. I'm seeing head nods. So that's great. Thank you for that suggestion. We are talking about materials, and so this is a perfect thing for us to bring to the aesthetics committee. We also received a question related to the terrible event that happened in Baltimore. Has there been any consideration to incorporate lessons learned from other bridge fails in our future design? And I'm thinking that, should we start with Mike Shannon, and then Kevin Greenwood from the Port of Hood River is also here and may have some things to add to this.
Yeah, and as far as the new bridge, there was collision criteria that actually was developed back in the 80s that has evolved over time, but it is something that we will take into consideration. We actually had some phone calls today with the barge operators of the Columbia, and understanding what kind of barge traffic we have, what kind of loads that they haul. We will be taking all of that into account as we design the piers for the bridge. One of the great things about our new bridge is that the existing bridge has a 246-foot wide navigation channel. The new one is actually 450 foot, so it's almost double the amount of room for the barges to go through, as well as just some of the design parameters of the bridge in bigger pier caps that will prevent things from hitting directly on the pier columns. There's also things that can be done from a safety deterrent standpoint. So we are looking at that. We're talking to the engineers about making sure they take that into consideration. And it'll be something that we definitely will be designing into our new bridge.
Thank you.
And I guess I would just hop in and say, if anything, in the off chance that something terrible happened to the existing bridge, we are an active part of the Hood River County hazard mitigation plan for disasters. We have an emergency action plan, emergency crisis management plan. We can actually control the variable message signs on both ends of the river from our cell phones if need be. And so we do occasional desktop exercises for these types of things. And so we do have a list of vessels in our marina if there's any reason that we need to actually get out with the Coast Guard to provide support to help people get out of the water in the worst case scenario. So we do have plans in place, and it's something that we take very seriously to make sure that this bridge is safe and operable until the new one is built and working. So that's our goal.
Thanks, Kevin. Commissioner Babbitts?
Yeah, if I could just jump in, I'm sure we've got some high school students online who know something about physics. And we have a lot of fears in our lives, but I think it's important to recognize when we're talking about the Columbia River, the sorts of vessels that are on the Columbia River are at least an order of magnitude, at least a factor of 10 less in mass than the sorts of vessels that than the vessel that was involved in this tragedy. The amount of energy which could be imparted upon the bridge by a vessel is far smaller. So yeah, that's all going to be taken into account in the design. So the term that was used was lessons learned, and I'm sure that there will be updates and that there will be consideration of those things. But the good news is basically the Bonneville Dam, the Dalles Dam limit the size of the vessels that can get to us. So not only do we know that the current vessels are far smaller than far less massive than this vessel, but we know that they can't. That would be a complete redesign of the dams in order to be able to have larger vessels.
Thank you for that question. It was a complete tragedy what happened this week, and our hearts go out to everybody who was impacted by the bridge failing and the accident. I have a few more questions for commissioners. The next one is, can you describe where the bridge is going to be? We kind of talked about this a little bit, but the nature of Facebook Live is that people come in and people come out. So where is the bridge going to be? Is it going to where on the west side or the east side of the current bridge? Where will the boats that park on the marina, or will they be impacted? And where will construction be staged? So Mike, Shannon, you already kind of touched on this a little bit. Can you just
Sure.
readdress that question?
Yeah, so the new bridge, I always say downstream because east-west, so it's to the west, but downstream of the existing structure, about 200 feet, basically parallel to the new structure. It will tie in to the existing intersection on the Oregon side with Marina Drive and Button Bridge Road, right there at the McDonald's Port intersection. We will not be impacting the interchange on I-84. And then on the Washington side, the plan is to put in a roundabout. That roundabout will be just west of the existing connection that's out there today. And again, as we said earlier, with minimal or no impact to the public during construction, because we can build all of that offline without having to impact that construction. As far as the marina, we have talked to the contractor. We are aware of all the activities that go on in the marina, and they have the ability to work around that. They do that all the time, working in cities, keeping businesses open, keeping traffic flow instead of working, in a city and working on roadways and traffic flow. It's just working on the water and maintaining water traffic. Safety will be our biggest concern with that. So there may be times where we want to cordon off areas or restrict areas due to safety, but those should be minimal. As far as staging areas, most likely the staging areas will be where the current port facilities are. We're actually planning to relocate the port and have that as a primary staging area. And then there will also be a staging area off-site or on the Washington side. And then depending on what construction method we end up using, if we do precast concrete or cast in place, we may also need off-site staging areas for concrete as well. So generally that's how we'll approach that.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna circle back to some things that Commissioner Babbitt and Commissioner Keitler were speaking to related to just keeping the cost of future tolls down. We had a comment that asking individuals to show that they are receiving food benefits would be an easy way to designate someone at a lower toll amount, or allow social service organizations to provide vouchers or request lower tolls for their clients. Do we want to add to that? I know Commissioner Babbitt, you spoke to this a little bit already.
Yeah, and so I know, for example, in the Hood River community, we have vouchers that people get for fuel, heating vouchers, that sort of thing. And we have agencies that we work with to do that. I'm sure that I can't remember the names on the White Salmon side, but I know that they have similar sorts of organizations. Absolutely, those are the folks who have the ability to do that. And rather than having the bridge authority go through a qualification process itself, leveraging the existing structures that we have in our communities, we really have a strong set of structures, and they, I'm sure, are up to the task of helping with this.
Thanks for responding to that. Related, when the commissioners are projecting toll income, as the tolls increase, we are sure that there will be a reduced amount of times that community members cross the bridge. So we need to factor in that there may be less money that we're projecting for tolls. I think more people are in the same situation. The higher the tolls also hurts local businesses, and it makes it or especially as it makes it, everyone is making it easier to shop online. Sorry, I'm trying to paraphrase and speak to all of you. But I think, like, to summarize, the higher toll projections that we have, or our toll income projections, may be impacted by the overall cost because it's harder for people to afford the higher tolls. And it's just, this also impacts our businesses on either side, as e-commerce is a readily available option. Marla Keeler, do you want to respond to that?
Well, I would just say it's nice to hear all that because it's certainly an echo of a lot of the comments I've received, and I'm sure some of the other commissioners have received as well. And it's why I'm really excited that our next one of these is really going to dive in on tolling and just all the different factors, because certainly we understand that if you're a business on the Washington side and, you know, flower delivery, product delivery, whatever it is, like all of the sudden that model is greatly affected, or you're having to make different decisions when you're factoring in the cost of the crossing of the bridge into your operations. I would say overall, none of these things are not being accounted for. And that's where it's really comes down to policy. You know, I think that ultimately there were decisions made about this initial increase that were really targeting the trips that were the passenger vehicles. That does not mean down the road that different analysis and formulations can be done about what does it look like if we shift some of the burden of future tolls or the cost of what that, you know, exponential increase looks like and how we're actually going to be calculating that. So a lot of those things are not right around the corner, but definitely where we are getting ready to do a lot of the study that will inform and hopefully give insight, not just for the community, but the commissioners of these decisions that are going to be coming up in, you know, a few years in terms of what is this set policy and who is it going to be impacting the most. And, you know, the founding charge of this authority is to really deliver a bridge that is cost effective, safe, accessible, but a core part of that cost factor is about the affordability for the people who use it daily.
Commissioner Babbitts.
Yeah, so one of the things I've really enjoyed learning about in the process of being involved in this is how the estimates are done for the tolling. And so there's a thing called the Traffic and Revenue Study, and we're about to start the third level of that analysis. And these folks who do this study, they understand how to evaluate things like the effect of increased tolling on the revenue. One of the interesting factors for us is that we're in a situation where we have a tolling history of 100 years on this bridge. So that can be factored in, and the level of accuracy that they can use to figure out how the tolls, how people will respond to higher tolls. Really, there's a lot of science that is behind that and a lot of history that's behind that. But there is a methodology, and they will be considering all of that. And one of the things that wasn't mentioned in the question that I'll also be pointing to is with the ability to get across by bike and by foot. That's also going to impact the tolls. And I know that they consider all of that. And it's going to be really interesting to watch over the next couple of months. It's probably the next 6 to 9 months as that analysis is done, because that has to be done all before we're allowed to borrow that money.
Really good points. I've got another question for you, Commissioner Keithler. Has there been any discussion of using the current Washington side approach to access the Riverside property that is owned by White Salmon once the new approach is built? I'm aware there has been some discussions about making that land a park, but there is no reasonable access due to the railroad. This could be one creative way to solve this problem. Thanks for all of your work on this.
And yes, we are totally on the same page here. This is part of the plan, you know, and I was speaking earlier to some of these benefits off the bridge that are the result of the bridge. And a riverfront project has been a White Salmon pursued project for quite some time. And it stalled out many years back because of that barrier of how could we afford to build a new crossing to get over the railroad tracks. And we definitely see an opportunity here to figure out access by taking advantage either of how people are moving off the new bridge, or potentially as the old bridge is removed, could a portion of that be saved to provide that access? And the county is part of that as well. They are part of some of that land ownership there on the riverfront, but this is a priority, not just for the city, but certainly has been talked about and is getting factored into some of the planning. And I will just put a plug in. Our goal here at the city is to also bring back the stairs. That has initial planning grant dollars that have already been awarded to the city, but we really envision this experience for people and when they come off on Washington to be able to get down to our waterfront finally, or make their way safely through up and through the bluff into downtown. So I think there are a lot of exciting opportunities when we're thinking about that network that will be the result of this project moving forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have one for you, Commissioner Wilson. I noticed the pedestrian and cyclist path in the picture of the new bridge looked very nice. Having said that, I know that there is conflict between pedestrians and cyclists at times. Any thought to having separation of some sort between the two?
Yes, and that was a topic that was in the workshop with the aesthetics committee was talked about a fair amount. Again, no real landing, but the discussion kind of goes anywhere from textures that give you a different texture where you're walking versus where you're riding a bike or supposed to something that's actually physical and starts to separate. We're going to have to weigh all those decisions. I think as e-bikes become more and more common, that creates a larger speed delta between the different modes of transportation, which makes the safety that much more challenging. So as we look at some of the current models on that, I think that'll help us resolve those types of questions. I'm a huge cyclist advocate, so I'm looking forward to being able to ride my bike across the bridge.
I'm with you, and I've been involved with this project now for about 2 years, and I feel like this is something that a ton of community members that I've been engaging with likes to bring up. So I think that there's just a ton of excitement for that opportunity. We have one final question, and then we are going to wrap up tonight's event. Why is Oregon funding lagging so far behind Washington funding? Marla Keeler, do you want to take this one?
Oh, why can't I tee up an Oregon resident for this one? I think this is, and I feel like Eric said it really well at the beginning, just all the different factors and why these kinds of projects are complicated and they take a long time. There are different things that the legislature in Salem is weighing against statewide priorities and their cycle of when they revisit large transportation funding. Similarly in Washington, then certainly at the federal level, different schedules and calendars. We are encouraged, I think, even though the amount was small that we saw from Oregon in the last session, not 24, but in 23, it was significant in that it was finally a firm signal that we were being heard and that they're acknowledging that this project is important. They're approaching it somewhat differently, but I think we're also mindful and respectful that they're navigating different things than maybe what Olympia is navigating, or certainly, the projects, it took us 2 years to get 200 million, but I'd say that's a pretty good record through the federal programs. But again, that's where we're really just emphasizing now, and a lot of that work will be even more important as we go into the fall and winter of this upcoming year, why your voices matter. When we did receive the Infra Award, what we heard feedback from Senator Cantwell's staff, what stuck with them, with her, were the personal stories. And we know how important that is to really continue to reinforce into Salem and Olympia that this bridge is critical if you live in our communities. So even though the amount is smaller than what we currently have in our pie from Washington and from the federal government, it doesn't mean that we don't think that we have the support and the acknowledgement of how this project's important. We just appreciate that what they're trying to do and how they're trying to work their different funding structures in is looking a little bit different and taking a little bit more time.
Thanks for taking that one.
And all you Oregon commissioners.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as that Oregon commissioner that Mayor Keithler was just addressing, what I can tell you is really the major problem is the cycle of transportation packages. So the legislatures, both Oregon and Washington, deal with big things every other year. And we started asking for this money shortly after a cycle where they finished a large transportation package. And now we're hoping in 2025 that they tackle transportation again. There are a lot of things on their agenda, and that is absolutely expected. So the cycle was just the timing was bad. And we're hoping that in 2025 we can get in there, and you can help us, as Mayor Kaefler just said, you can help us get the message across to our legislators, especially if you're an Oregon resident, that this is something that is worthy of funding and that it gets worked into the transportation package of the 2025 long session.
Thank you. Okay, I've got one final comment before we wrap up. Thank you. This is from somebody on Facebook. Thank you for organizing this. The feedback is greatly appreciated. Some individuals here live outside the gorge on other states, but we plan to visit here. Thank you again. We look forward to seeing the initial startup next year. And I also want to just thank all of our commissioners that participated this evening and our staff that were here. Thanks for letting me fire all these questions at you. And for anybody participating and that's still on with us, keep your questions coming. I know this is something that we've said a couple of times this evening, but we are listening. We have a couple of ways for you to send us your feedback. You can always go to the website, which Anna, who you can see on screen, she's going to put the website into the chat. But it's hoodriverbridge.org, and you can sign up for updates there. You can also see when we're doing events, and you can email us directly. Additionally, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to join us at the upcoming open house on April 17th. It's going to be in White Salmon, and you can find all the details again at hoodriverbridge.org. And we will be recording this Facebook Live event, so you can keep streaming it on repeat if you want. It will be on our Facebook page, but you can also watch it through the website. And I'm going to pass it over to Commissioner Keesler, who's just got a couple of final thoughts before we close for tonight.
Yeah, I guess on behalf of the commissioners, thank you all, whether you were here for the whole time or jumped in and shared your questions. Like I said earlier, it's really valuable for us to have these opportunities to hear from people. You're always welcome at our meetings. Those are held actually here in White Salmon in the office building near the very iconic. I feel like everybody knows where White Salmon Eye Care is. So go to that and you'll see our sign going up soon. But those can be hard to make it to. So as Jessica said, if you're not already signed up for alerts, if you see these events or reach us on the official Facebook page, someone will get back to you. We'd also welcome suggestions on future topics. We're really trying to make these things focused on different subject matters as this bridge gets going. And as I said earlier, the next one is going to be a deeper dive on tolling, which sounds a little bit overdue. And then the other thing, I know I said it earlier, so I don't want to sound like a beat the same drum. I feel like bad saying dead horse, but anyway, we really do encourage you to reach out to your representatives. I think Anna's going to be putting it in the Facebook comment thread, just a link where you can find who your representatives are, whether you're on the Oregon side or Washington side. And you can always join our meetings. I know that I said the location, but those are the second and fourth Monday from 2 to 4. Those are public meetings and we always welcome comments. But again, thank you all. We really appreciate your participation. It's your project. So our faces will change, but whomever we are your voice on this, and it's our project for our communities. So we want to make sure that your voices are heard and that the policy decisions made are reflecting what the community wants.
All right, and with that, enjoy your evenings. Thanks again.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Take care.